The other trend I'd like to point out here is the potential for India to be a key destination for Australian wool exports. In 2009-10, India emerged for the first time as the second biggest destination for Australian wool exports. You can see it's a very long way behind China, and over this period, in the last 10 years, total exports have halved, but volumes to China have increased, and volumes to India are relatively comparable, resulting in increased market share for India. The projected growth of India's processing sector is likely to increase competition with China for Australian raw wool, which hopefully should flow back to higher prices here at home. So to sum up the outlook for wool, the key message to take away is that although prices might decline slightly in real terms over the medium term, we're expecting much higher average returns for Australian growers compared to the previous 5 years. We're also expecting to see within this coming years a turnaround in what has been a very long-term decline in Australian wool production. Okay, so that is the outlook for wool. Turning now to cotton, the story here is also pretty positive. We're projecting a favourable outlook for cotton growers over at least the next 2 to 3 years, based on forecast higher world cotton prices and the recent replenishment of irrigation dams in Australia. These developments should assist the industry to recover from the prolonged effects of drought and also more recently the effects of the flooding in Queensland. This here you can see the prices in the blue. Prices are estimated to be a huge 79% higher than last year on an average across the year basis. The strong upward pressure we've seen so far this year is largely due to strong demand, but also to low world stocks of cotton, even though world cotton production is expected to be higher this season relative to the last one. You can see here there's a broadly inverse relationship between the stocks to use ratio and the cotton price. Now this low stocks to use ratio goes a long way to explaining why cotton prices have been so high this year. The ratio of world cotton closing stocks to use is estimated to be at 33%, the lowest level since 1995. As that ratio comes back up, we'd be expecting prices to fall. For the rest of this year, cotton prices are expected to ease as production from the Southern Hemisphere producers, Australia and Brazil, comes online from about March. Next year, we're expecting further stocks rebuilding as production catches up with consumption. This will increase the stocks to use ratio, but we're still expecting that ratio to remain well below the average for the past 10 years. World cotton prices next year are accordingly forecast to fall, averaging 34 cents a pound less than this year. Over the medium term, you can see here that we're projecting world prices for cotton to ease, but still remain fairly favourable for cotton producers. The cotton indicator price is expected to average around US 90 cents a pound towards the end of the outlook period in constant dollar terms. This is lower than the prices, obviously, that we're forecasting for the short term, but it's still, compared with an average of US 68 cents a pound over the past 5 years, it's still pretty good. The low world stocks, continuing growth in demand and slowing cotton productivity growth are the three key factors that underpin this medium-term projection. World production. We're forecasting world production to increase by 2.8 million tonnes next year to a record of 28 million tonnes. Then over the medium term, world cotton plantings are expected to expand in response to higher prices. However, in some countries, strong competition for land from alternative crops, notably corn and soybeans, is expected to constrain increases in production. One place where we can expect increases in production is in Brazil, which has large potential to respond to higher cotton prices with increased plantings. This will be assisted by adoption of GM varieties more suited to Brazilian conditions. While some growth in cotton lint yields is also projected over the medium term, the rate of yield growth, so the cotton productivity growth, is expected to slow as almost complete uptake is reached with the current generation of GM crops. The new GM traits that are still being developed, and they're still several years away from being commercially viable. World growth in cotton consumption this financial year is expected to be constrained by high cotton prices and relatively low prices for alternative fibres such as polyester. Next year, growth in world cotton consumption is forecast to increase to around 3%, as the forecast easing in cotton prices encourages increased demand. World demand for cotton is expected to continue to grow throughout the outlook period. The main factors expected to influence this growth are the rate of economic and population growth and the price of cotton relative to competing apparel fibres, particularly polyester prices. Turning now to look at the situation for Australia, grower returns are forecast to average $656 a bale this year, which is about $140 higher than last year. We're forecasting a record cotton production in Australia this year, nearly 10% higher than the previous record. High world cotton prices, combined with the effect of improved availability of irrigation water, is driving this large increase in production. Now, there have been floods in some parts of Queensland over the summer, and we've estimated that this will destroy around 7% of total cotton plantings and also lower yield potential in some areas. However, these losses are not expected to stop production this year from being at a record high. The average capacity of public irrigation dams serving the cotton growing regions was at 90% in late February 2011. Only the Copetown Dam serving the Guida region is still well below full capacity. Based on the high level of stored irrigation water and the forecast continuation of high prices, Australian cotton production is forecast to reach a new record of 1.1 million tonnes in 2011-12. Now, the current state of stored irrigation water in cotton production should ensure favourable production conditions for at least the next 2 seasons. However, water reforms planned for the Murray-Darling Basin, where around 90% of Australia cotton is grown, could reduce the availability of water to Australian cotton growers in the future. However, because of the nature of these reforms are still being negotiated, and in any case wouldn't be fully implemented till 2019, the impact of the reforms hasn't been included in these projections given. However, we have done some work on the impact of the proposals outlined in the Guide to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, and this work indicates that cotton production is likely to be significantly affected in the longer term. Australian cotton production is expected to decline steadily from the high forecast for next year to around about 750 kilotonnes over the medium term. This projection is based on the assumption that irrigation dams return to more normal storage levels. So to sum up for cotton, the story is similar in several ways to that of wool. We're currently experiencing high prices relative to recent history, and although we're expecting those prices to ease, we're still looking at a fairly favourable returns to Australian fibre growers, at least for the next few years. Seasonal conditions are also looking great, as recent rainfall has improved pasture growth and replenished irrigation levels. Where the two commodities differ most is that while we're currently looking at a record for cotton, we're down to historically low supplies of wool. Both fibres face competition from the man-made fibres, and both face the challenge of continuing to find ways to improve industry productivity and the quality and consistency of their production. But, all in all, it's not a bad time to be in the fibre industry in Australia. Thank you.